London after midnight hums like a tired refrigerator, quiet until you listen too hard. Beneath all that sleeping city, my station waits, sealed behind steel shutters no one remembers raising since 1963. Aldwych South, ghost stop of the Piccadilly line. On paper, it's decommissioned, but someone has to keep the damp and rodents from eating it alive. That someone's me. Every night at 11:30, I badge in through a side service door between two souvenir shops. The smell hits first. Rust, mildew, the metallic breath of tunnels that haven't exhaled passengers in half a century. My mop bucket rattles behind me like a bored dog. The ticket hall ceiling still bears the peppered scorch marks from wartime blackouts. Pigeons roost in lighting fixtures long cold. It's peaceful work. I wipe, I hum whatever tune the pipes make. I talk to the old advertisements peeling off the tiles. War bonds, cigarettes, holidays by rail nowhere west of 1960. Each scrape of my brush echoes down corridors that feel longer than they should be. Sometimes I count my steps for company. 220 from the hall to platform A, 251 back, always the same. There's still power on one line, no one knows why. A single strand of ancient cabling snakes below the south platform, glowing faintly, enough to keep a few emergency lamps alive. I tell myself it's residual current from the active tunnels beyond. At exactly 3 a.m., I take my break, sitting on a wooden bench that's been empty since Harold Macmillan was Prime Minister, sipping thermos tea that tastes faintly of bleach. Up above, the city forgets this place ever breathed. Down here, though, the air remembers every announcement, every screech of braking train wheels. The quiet's what I'm paid for, but some nights, even silence feels crowded. People think working alone underground must be terrifying. It isn't, not at first. It's the same every night. Unlock the steel gate, flick the breaker, drag the mop till dawn. The fear sneaks in slowly, one echo at a time. My supervisor, old Mr. Staples, checks on me maybe once a month. His only consistent instruction is keep it tidy for inspections we never have. The tube bureaucracy treats Aldwych South like an embarrassing relative, too inconvenient to bury, too uncanny to acknowledge. My paycheck clears from a department that technically doesn't exist. Works out fine. I am a man who prefers not being noticed. The tunnels oblige. Tile dust coats the air so thick you can taste centuries. Even footsteps change tone down here. They arrive a fraction late, as though the walls repeat everything back politely. It's comforting in a bleak way. When I started 6 years ago, I gave the echoes names. The double tap near the lift shaft is Mabel. The faint shuffle along track 2, Tom. Helped keep me talking human words instead of the nonsense phrases that bounce in empty rooms. A station like this eats language. You invent noise just to remind yourself you still own sounds. Security guards laugh whenever I mention the place. "Mate, that line's all blocked up," one said. "You couldn't even fit a mouse train through there." Maybe. Still, once in a while polishing the brass rail, I'll feel a sigh rising through the metal, as if the next train just passed a world too removed for light to follow. There's comfort in habit, though. Habit's armor. You stop wondering why the janitor's log still lists passenger flow maintenance hours. You don't question why the intercom crackles each night at 3:17 with a clipped female voice saying, "Service suspended." It's just old wires, leftover electricity playing ghost. After my shift, I climb the service stairs to the alley where wet city air greets me like a slap. Taxis roar by. Dawn smells of diesel and bakeries warming ovens. And every morning, before I turn the corner, I check the padlock twice. The brass always feels warmer than it should, warmer than the rest of London. Mr. Staples says metal keeps heat longer underground. I try believing him, but sometimes, when that lock trembles against my palm, it doesn't feel like it's holding heat. It feels like it's holding breath. Wednesday night started like any of them. Same dull trek across the old concourse, same echoes drumming time for one man and his mop. I'd finished scrubbing the west stairwell when the smell hit me. Strong chemicals, fresh paint. No one paints anything down here, not since '63. Halfway along platform A, a new streak of red stretched across the cream-tiled wall, looping elegant as handwriting. At first, I thought some railway historian had sneaked in to mark a tour route. Then I saw the words, "Mind the gap in time." The paint still shone wet under the overhead bulbs, except the bulbs were cold. I touched the wall. The letters pulsed faint warmth into my fingertips. One bead of paint, bright as blood, slid upward against gravity and vanished into the groove of the grout. I took out my phone to photograph it, but the screen blinked white, then black. When the camera reset, the wall was clean again. Nothing but flaking tiles and my own reflection. My first theory was stress. Maybe too many nights alone make your brain need company. Yet fresh turpentine clung to the air, sharp enough to burn the throat. I coughed for fully a minute before realizing I could hear a second cough echoing mine, delayed by exactly 3 beats. Back in the CCTV room, a glorified broom cupboard lined with ancient monitors, I rewound the platform feed by an hour. Nothing. The camera facing that wall must not have caught it. I fast-forwarded, then paused at 02:47, a flicker of shadow sliding along the tile, elongated like someone pacing with a brush. The outline of a hand lifted, making a stroke across blank space, but the feed glitched into static before I could freeze the frame. When the picture returned, the wall again bore that same red phrase. My stomach dropped at the timestamp burned into the corner. 03:17, the exact minute the intercom always announces service suspended. I printed a still for evidence, left it on the control desk, and forced myself to mop the floors like nothing had happened. Work done, lights out, clock out. A good janitor doesn't investigate miracles. By morning, I'd reasoned somebody from the preservation team might be pranking me. Tour guides love a scare legend. Still, curiosity snaked its way in while I poured my tea. The letters had looked too confident for a vandal, not sprayed, not hurried. They were precise, as if whoever wrote them knew every groove of the wall better than I did. That evening, I scrubbed the same spot with bleach until the tile cracked. Beneath the glaze, a faint red shimmer remained, almost echoing the words. For the first time on that shift, I stopped humming with the tunnel's rhythm, because the silence that followed wasn't empty, it was listening. A few nights later, the security contractor showed up for his monthly meter check. Mick, mid-40s, thick accent from somewhere north of Manchester, and a fondness for spooky gossip. He always treated the sealed tube lines like campfire legends waiting to be monetized. "Ever hear of the 317? He asked, grinning as he scanned the old power junction. "Supposed to be a maintenance run," I said. He shook his head, flashlight beam trembling in the dust. "No official roster. Story goes, once a month a full 6-car train rolls through these closed tunnels, all lights off except one in the driver's cab. No operator logged, no destination marked. Happens bang on 3:17 a.m. I laughed politely, already mapping out my route back to the broom closet. "Mate, there hasn't been current down here for half a century." "Yeah?" Mick grinned wider. "Then explain the surge I get on the meters every few weeks, same time. Peaks like something's drawing power from the old grid." He turned the tablet toward me, a jagged graph, one spike dead center at 0317. "You're telling me fishin' tales," I muttered, but my stomach disagreed. That number again. When he left, I inspected the switchboard myself. Ancient gauges trembled ever so slightly even though the breakers were fully down. Somewhere deep, machinery hummed, the kind of low vibration that lives in bone rather than ear. I double-locked every access door before finishing rounds. But curiosity, that patient parasite, kept gnawing. So an hour before closing, I positioned a motion sensor across platform A, just for proof that nothing happens. At exactly 03100, the sensor's green LED blinked once. The air grew dense, temperature dropping fast enough for my breath to show. The floor trembled faintly. No screeching wheels, no air displacement, just the rhythm of invisible momentum. Then the tannoy cracked to life for the first time in my tenure. Next train arriving on Platform 1. The ceiling lights flickered along the tunnel's curve, chasing the darkness ahead like a fuse racing to explode. For just a few seconds, the opposite wall reflected something that wasn't supposed to exist. Silhouettes lined neatly in expectation, their coats and handbags old-fashioned, all facing where the train should appear. The lights steadied. The tunnel was empty. The passengers had vanished, even their shadows gone. I backed into the service lift, heart rattling, and jammed the emergency stop halfway up just to catch a breath that didn't taste of iron. Through the lift grating, the tunnel still glimmered faintly red, as though the Mind the Gap in Time paint had burned into the rail bed beneath. By morning, the sensor log read, "No movement detected." But one thing had changed. The system clock also now read 0317, frozen and uneditable. Mr. Staples blamed old wiring. I didn't argue. There's no box on our maintenance forms for phantom timetable compliance. The next week began with ordinary noise, dripping pipes, far-off hum of street lines, my mop sloshing lazy circles, but ended in something far less explainable. Tuesday, right before 3 a.m., the power dipped. Once, twice. The fluorescents fluttered like eyelids about to sleep, then steadied again. Except the corridor seemed longer afterward. I'd mopped this stretch thousands of times. I knew the count. 220 steps exactly from locker door to the bench. That night, it took 239. When I reached the bench, a faint glow hovered at the far end of the platform, just where the tunnel swallowed black. At first, I thought Mick had returned to prank me. The glow brightened, soft, yellowish, the tint of sodium lamps no one used anymore. Then figures unfolded from the dark, like negatives developing in slow water. 5 of them, maybe 6. Hard to know. The light kept glitching around their outlines. They stood spaced precisely along the edge, each dressed in a style 3 generations out of fashion. A woman's hair pinned like the Queen's portrait, a man in a long wool coat clutching a newspaper that sagged under invisible gravity. Every one of them still as a photograph, until they all turned their heads toward me at the same time. My throat locked. The lights flickered once more, and they were gone. I tried pretending it was reflections, perhaps the row of glass front display cases catching car headlights from the street above, but the nearest roadway was 30 feet and 2 turns away. Down here, there were no angles to reflect from. My radio crackled, white noise, then the faint ghost of the transport voice I'd memorized from old archival tapes. Next train arriving on Platform 1. The same timbre, precise diction, feminine but mechanical. Negative, I whispered to no one in particular. There's no train service scheduled. A second later, the platform shook, gentle as a long sigh. I felt it through the mop handle before I heard it, like someone slapping steel from beneath. When silence returned, the emergency lights cycled once and settled into low orange, standby mode, but that system had been disconnected years ago. Somewhere between disbelief and duty, I started counting again, 1 slow step at a time back toward the main hall. At 100 steps, the overheads blinked, and for a heartbeat, the tiled walls reflected rows of waiting faces beside mine, every face I'd ever glimpsed on the station posters. By the time the bulbs steadied, it was only me again and the smell of ozone. I logged the event at shift's end, just the facts. Brief power fluctuation, potential hallucination, recommend electrical audit. Mr. Staples skimmed the note, said, "Well, let's hope it's ghosts. Cheaper than rewiring." He laughed. I didn't. When you've cleaned the same platforms long enough, you start cataloging every sound. There's comfort in knowing which groan belongs to which pipe. So the new noise, the steady metallic ticking rising from below, didn't fit any shelf in my head. It came from under the boards, rhythmic and patient, like a watch hidden in the walls. I traced it past Platform B and into a service corridor sealed with a rusted chain. The lock crumbled under a single twist of my wrench. The door moaned awake, sighing a draft of air so cold it froze my breath mid-whistle. The tunnel beyond was narrower than regulation, just wide enough for a man with a flashlight and his ghosts. Old inspection signs warned danger, high voltage. Their yellow paint still glowed faintly in the dark. I followed the ticking down 3 flights of metal stairs, the walls sweating moisture that smelled of copper. Each level deeper, the hum from old cabling grew louder, as if the power grid had been dreaming through all these decades and was beginning to speak in its sleep. The adverts lining the walls shimmered under my torch. One for cigarettes priced in shillings, another for a Beatles concert that never quite happened. Halfway down the 3rd level, the posters changed. No mildew, no tears, fresh print. One announced a music festival in 2025. Another displayed a sleek mag train design labeled Piccadilly Future Extension. I touched the edge. It was warm, ink still tacky, as though someone had plastered it that afternoon. The ticking stopped, replaced by the sound of distant rails singing, 2 notes, alternating, the melody of a train decelerating. I quickened my pace until the tunnel opened into an old maintenance hub. Everything about the chamber was wrong. Consoles hummed, indicator bulbs blinking crystalline red. Someone had cleaned this place recently. Tools were laid out precisely, and the floor gleamed with oil. Against the far wall, a signal box thrummed, every lever aligned forward except one labeled Rhyolite cut-in. That lever pulsed with dim blue light. I crouched to read the panel beneath it. The etching looked brand new. System reactivation schedule, 03:17 a.m. "All right," I said into the stale air. "You got my attention." Behind me, footsteps echoed, slow, deliberate. I turned just in time to see a smear of darkness retract around a corner, not like a person running, but like a shadow being reeled back by its source. My torch flickered. The beam caught the curved gleam of something metallic, the outline of rail lines arcing out of the far wall and vanishing into concrete. Impossible angle, perfectly clean steel. My palms had started sweating so hard the torch slipped. I grabbed the edge of a console to steady myself, and beneath the hiss of electricity, a familiar voice whispered right against my ear. "Tickets, please." Every bulb in the room blinked white, syncing with the rhythm of a pulse, not mine. When the blackout faded 3 seconds later, the signal lever labeled Rhyolite cut-in had flipped forward on its own. A faint horn echoed upward through the tunnels, rolling toward the sleeping city above. I ran. I didn't stop running until the tunnel widened again, an abandoned concourse swallowed in half-dark. My torch rolled from my hand and clattered into the grime. The beam tilted upward into a haze of dust motes shimmering like ash. A voice drifted through them. "Easy, lad. You'll miss your stop." Standing in the mouth of a side passage was a man, or the outline of one, dressed in the bleached remnants of a London transport uniform, peaked cap, black gloves, double-breasted coat sun-faded to a uniform gray. In his left hand he carried a lantern filled with swirling silver mist, as though someone had trapped mercury in glass. "Who's there?" My attempt at authority sounded brittle even to me. The man stepped fully into view. His face was pale iron, edges indistinct, but his eyes gleamed coin-bright. "Tickets, please?" I forced a laugh. "Station's been closed since '63. You're half a century late for fares." He smiled politely, the way conductors used to on postcards. "Service never really stops, not underneath." He extended his right hand, the lantern's light pooling across the walls. Tile work rippled beneath it, war posters reforming in crisp color, and for a moment, the whole place looked alive again, clean, busy, freshly built. "You've maintained her well," he said. "We appreciate that." My pulse hammered. "We?" A low vibration answered, hundreds of feet moving in perfect unison somewhere below. The echo rolled through the soles of my boots like thunder trapped under glass. The conductor tilted his head toward the cross passage. "There was a schedule interruption. They'll be wanting on. First train in a very long time." I stepped backward, wishing for my radio. "Who are you?" He lowered the lantern, its light dimming to a dull heartbeat. "Call me what they called every man who pointed the way. Guard, porter, death on time." He gestured toward the walls, and faint shapes bled out of them, passengers forming from plaster and grit, uniforms and scarves coalescing from dust. Their voices rustled like newspapers. All of them faced me, waiting. The conductor's eyes softened. "All they require is your help to make it clean again. Every journey needs a caretaker." "I'm not joining any bloody shift change," I breathed. He nodded once, almost sad. "Then mop quickly tonight, Mr. Rowe. At 3:17, you'll find it difficult to stand clear of the doors." The mercury light flared, flooding the corridor white. When it faded, he and his crowd were gone. Only footprints remained, black soot outlines leading toward the main platform. My torch flickered back to life on the floor, still aimed down tunnel. Far ahead, something metallic shimmered in the dark, rails shining perfectly new. I wanted to tell myself they'd always been there, but I'd scrubbed that floor last night. The platform was alive with light when I emerged, all the dead bulbs burning a soft amber, too gentle for fluorescence. I made it halfway to the edge before the pressure hit, the crawling sense that the entire station was holding its breath. Then came the wind. Not a draft or a passing gust, but a full-bodied rush forcing grit against my face and tugging my coat backward. I squinted into it, knees braced, just as the tunnels began to hum that low, familiar two-note rhythm, arrival. No rails gleamed there yesterday, yet a gleaming track unfurled from the dark like a ribbon of mercury. From its depths rolled light, white and cold, and out of that light, a train. It screamed up to the platform almost silently, all 6 cars lustrous and impossible. Old silver livery from the 60s polished clean to glass. The wheels didn't touch the rail, they hovered a finger's width above. Doors shuddered, opened, and where air should have escaped came a breath that smelled faintly of wet dust and perfume. Inside sat passengers. Rows of them frozen in gentle sway. Women with shopping baskets, men in tweed hats, a child clutching the Eagle comic dated September 1963. Their eyes were half-lidded, their faces neither decayed nor breathing. The PA system clicked alive. Same voice as ever, too calm, every syllable still intact after 60 years. Mind the gap, mind the gap. But this time it added one more phrase, almost kindly. In time. I turned to run, yet the wind pulled me forward instead, sucking at my boots. The tunnel lights pulsed with every syllable of the announcement. Even the walls joined the chant. My mop bucket skittered past, slammed into the carriage, and vanished inside. Something unseen brushed my shoulder, soft cloth, cold skin, and whispered, "Platform clear." A bell chimed 3 short notes. The doors folded like paper. For half a heartbeat, I stared into the nearest window and saw the conductor's silhouette tip his cap. Where his reflection should have shown, I saw my own uniform, same ID badge, same tired eyes. The air burst outward with enough force to throw me off my feet. When I hit the tiles, everything went black. Morning found me sprawled beside the track. The lamps were out again, rails gone, the floor dusty as ever. My thermos lay upright beside me, tea still warm. Above, the intercom slid out a single word before dying back into static. Departed. I came to at 7:30 a.m., throat raw from yelling that I didn't remember. My flashlight still worked, but my watch face spiderwebbed with cracks. For a long time, I stayed kneeling, telling myself the faint ache in my arms was just from the fall, not from anything that had tried to hold me down. The tunnel was normal again, gray, empty, obediently dead. Still, something felt off. Every time I moved, ash lifted from the floor in precise spirals, like the echo of departing wheels. Dust motes shaped my name for a moment before dissolving. Rash imagination, I thought. I signed out 3 hours late. The security guard on surface barely looked up from his newspaper. "You all right, mate? You look like you've seen the rent." "Power surge," I muttered, and I fell asleep. He waved me through, uninterested. The streets outside should have grounded me. Taxis, cigarette smoke, morning chatter, but everything looked a tick too young. Shop fronts brighter, traffic signs the newer design with rounded fonts that weren't scheduled to appear for another week. I didn't realize how wrong it all was until I reached my bedsit and the landlady blinked at me as if she'd seen a ghost. "Mr. Rowe, love, they told me you passed away. Gas leak, 1963. My stomach dropped. "What year do you think this is?" Her brow furrowed. "Oh, I don't think. I know. 1963. Don't toy with me." I staggered back, checking the date on my ID tag out of pure instinct. The laminated surface had changed. Its corner logo read British Rail Metro rather than Transport for London, and just under my name was an issue date, May 1962. I laughed once, helplessly. The sound came out hollow and old. Back at the station, the morning crew swore nobody had clocked in under my name for decades. Personnel files listed me as deceased, service accident, 1963. My body caught in collapse of short siding tunnel. Siding engineer glanced up from the microfilm copy with a strange tenderness. "Whoever you are, that photo could be you, spitting image." It was me, except the print was sepia, and the man wore a uniform like the conductor's. I left the office before they could call anyone. By the time I reached Aldwych South again, the padlock on the service door hung open, chain neatly looped aside, brass warm to the touch, as if I'd just undid it myself. Inside, dust lined every surface except one clear streak spelling Row in finger-wide letters. I don't know what unnerves me more, that someone wrote it, or that the strokes match my handwriting. I spent the next day bouncing between departments of London Transport, each more bewildered than the last. The clerks looked at me with polite bureaucracy, faces trained to nod at lunatics. At Records and Heritage, a kind woman named Lorna pulled up a digitized logbook on her screen. "Aldwych South?" she said. "That property's been sealed since 1963. Utilities off, staff reassigned, no contractors permitted." "I'm the janitor," I said. "Badge number 8841. I slid the card across the desk. She examined it, brows knitting. "We haven't used laminated passes like this since the 90s. She smiled, meaning to be gentle. "It's a convincing reproduction, though." I asked her to check for my records on the payroll. After 10 minutes of typing, her face drained of color. She turned the monitor so I could see. A scanned incident report with my name near the top. The words "deceased," tunnel collapse 16 Oct 1963, stamped in clean ink. The accompanying photograph showed the recovery scene. Bent rails, fallen ceiling, one boot sticking from rubble. "That's not possible," I whispered. Lorna clicked the window shut and leaned over the counter. "A prank, maybe? You'd be surprised how often copycat files pop up when they digitize archives. Don't let it get to you." Her reassurance thudded dull in my ears. Outside, the afternoon crowds blurred past. I found myself walking aimlessly toward the Thames, badge digging cold against my chest. Back in my flat, I queued up the CCTV footage from my last shift, digital copy salvaged before the servers reset. For the first 20 minutes, everything played normally. Then, at 03:17, the camera caught me standing on the platform, broom in hand, alone. I watched as I turned toward the tunnel and began speaking, lips moving, gestures animated, but there was nobody on the platform. The subtitles generated automatically by the software wrote, "Next train arriving on platform 1. I scrubbed backward frame by frame, expecting to see distortion. Instead, for one clear instant, there were two of me, one sweeping, one wearing the conductor's cap, both moving with the same weary precision. When the clip ended, the file renamed itself, rowittrain.mp4. I shut the laptop and sat in the dark until the city's first commuter train thundered somewhere far above, that familiar metallic roar bleeding down through miles of concrete like a heartbeat echoing through a coffin. The rational part of me whispered I was cracked, lonely, overworked. Yet the other part, the one tuned to the resonance of empty tunnels, knew bureaucracy can erase lives as easily as chalk. And sometimes, if a man polishes enough tile, the reflection doesn't blink when he does. I didn't hand in a resignation. Men like me don't get believed or missed. Instead, I did what the living do best. I went back to work. By nightfall, the air outside already carried that damp Thames chill, heavy with exhaust and rain. I bought strong tea, filled my flask, then descended the alley stairs toward Aldwych South, as if muscle memory had written the coordinates into my bones. The padlock swung open on its own hinge. Inside, the tunnels smelled freshly scrubbed, like someone had mopped just before me. My flashlight beams stretched farther than usual, catching the faint shimmer of new paint along the wall. Staff entrance only, written in identical handwriting to mine. Habit steadied me more than courage. I replaced the bucket, wrung out the mop, and started my first sweep. The echoes matched me perfectly now, not late, not early. One sound, two owners. At 3:10 a.m., the intercom clicked alive. No static this time, only piano. 4 lonely notes repeated, a tune I recognized but couldn't name. By 3:17, the lights shifted from their usual diseased white to a steady warm glow. The platform looked impossibly clean, shining like a mirror of the old days. Then came a distant chime. The rails that shouldn't have existed shimmered into focus, stretching into perfect lines under flawless copper wiring. The wind tasted of coal smoke and perfume again. I should have run. Instead, I set the mop handle against the bench and waited as the rails began to sing. When the sound reached its peak, I caught my reflection in the emergency glass. Cap, jacket, badge polished to brilliance. I hadn't put any of them on. Something in me sighed. It wasn't terror, not even surrender. It was recognition, the way you feel stepping back into a home you'd left untidy. As the first halo of headlights bloomed in the tunnel, I smiled and whispered to whoever was listening, "All right then, let's get the floors properly done this time." And when the train arrived, I stepped forward, still humming the cleaning song the pipes used to play. The recording they found later is short, a 40-second voicemail left on the maintenance line, time-stamped 03:18 a.m. The voice is calm, dryly British, mine beyond any doubt. "Row, reporting final shift complete. Station's all polished. Looks grand. Everything's working again. Lights, tannoy, even the timetable. Guess it was never really closed, just waiting for staff." A pause, the sound of distant rails answering his words in low harmony. "Cleaning's only remembering, isn't it? Wipe enough dust away and the old days start to shine through. You'd be surprised what still glows underneath. Anyway, tell the next lad to mind the..." The message cuts off mid-sentence, replaced by a faint bell chime and a woman's voice announcing, "Train approaching platform 1." The engineers swear there's no active wiring within a mile of Aldwych South, yet that recording loop still plays every night at 03:17, echoing through an empty line. The station gate stays welded now, padlocked by 3 separate departments, each pretending the others handle maintenance. Bureaucracy has always been good at burying ghosts. If you happen to ride the Piccadilly line after hours and notice the train slowing in an unlit stretch, don't peer out the window. Don't squint for a nameplate or count the benches. You'll see a man in a gray jacket mopping the platform, lantern light gleaming on the tiles, humming against the rhythm of the rails. He'll tip his cap when you notice him, tip yours back, and move to the next carriage. That's just courtesy among railwaymen. And if you feel the carriage doors hesitate, if the gap seems wider than usual, remember his last words. Mind the gap in time. Keep the lights on when you travel. Keep the windows closed between stations. And if you ever hear soft piano echoing through the tunnel, please stay seated.